and welcome. Thanks, Phil, for doing this. Appreciate it.
Hey, it's a pleasure, man. It's always a laugh to chat to you.
Yeah, how are things? Are you back in the UK, or where are you located these days?
Yeah. I'm in the north of the UK. Just got this bizarre news about wearing masks and stuff.
What kind of is that are you guys mandated to? What's the story out there these days? You got
From the 24th, apparently the virus is on holiday until the 24th, but it comes back on the 24th, and so then we have to start wearing masks then in shops. But it's not going to happen, not for me anyway. Hey, Brad.
interesting. Yeah, everybody else. So everybody else is on mute here. So otherwise we'll get a lot of extraneous background noise.
Yeah.
The folks will be able to ask questions through the chat, and so I'll relay those questions to you as time allows. But so anyway, Phil, for those that aren't sort of aware of your background, and you have a very interesting background, I know particularly with things like psoriatic arthritis. Can you give us a little rundown on your story real quick, and then we can start chatting?
Yeah, sure. I'll see if I can whiz through it quickly. Yeah, I think for decades, really, I was interested in diet and lifestyle and stuff like that. And I studied as much as I could for about 30 odd years. And I was vegetarian mostly. And that led me into a load of trouble. I thought I was a real expert, even wrote a book about it. But then it's funny, it's when the sickness hits that you realize that perhaps you're not the great guru you thought you were. And 2010, properly failed with psoriatic arthritis. I was pretty fat as well, and had all sorts of issues, arterial calcifications, kidney stones. Well, actually that came after my vegan experiment where I juiced too much spinach. But yeah, went fully vegan, lost all the fat and lost all the muscle as well, and ended up very emaciated, and I discovered Natasha Campbell McBride and started off on the GAPS protocol, which started to heal me. Then discovered Jack Cruz and all his craziness, and a lot of that stuff I thought was great too, and got to know Jack, and he did the foreword to my next book that I wrote about the arthritis and how I fixed it. But I pretty much fixed it by about 2013. A few little niggles, but mostly gone, and all the fatty liver gone, and cysts on the liver, no more kidney stones, all of that kind of thing. But then I started to notice that there were people talking about carnivore. And in 2015, I thought, I'm sick of vegetables. I don't really like them anyway. They're just, sponges for butter. And so I knocked them on the head, and things improved even more. And that continues to this day. And I've been carnivore for about 5 years now, and it's great. Love the food, love the simplicity, love the rebellious nature of it, love the death threats from the vegans. It's all fun.
Yeah, I think your favorite part is the rebellious nature, and I sometimes like that too, Phil. And I remember you and I communicated over email a couple of years ago, and it's good to see that the psoriatic arthritis has improved. And you're a musician as well, I think, aren't you?
I am, yeah, I'm a drummer. I couldn't pick up the sticks for a couple of years. Now, I mean, what I'm left with is, as I've discussed with you, I've got like a sticky left knee that doesn't bend completely, but there's no inflammation or pain in it, but it's a bit sticky. And a wrist that goes about that far, but again, no inflammation. If I had inflammation in it, I wouldn't be able to do that. That would really hurt. So playing drums, I don't notice it, whatever, but that's been going on since the early 90s. I think I've had psoriatic arthritis since the early 90s, but it was never diagnosed back then. It was diagnosed as Kienbock's disease, which is kind of lucky, because I think if it had been diagnosed back then, I probably would have taken the meds and started that awful downward spiral that I see so many times on these arthritis groups that I get thrown off constantly. So for suggesting that meat might be an answer. So yeah, but now that's all I've got really. That's all I've got left from it. It was in my ankles, toes, it was in my fingers, it was in my other wrist, it was in my neck, in my spine, shoulders, and there's no trace of it whatsoever there anymore. No trace at all, not even any damage, just a little bit of damage I've got left in one wrist and one knee. But I tell you what, that is really worth it for the knowledge that I picked up during that time. So I'm happy with that. I'd never have learned this stuff without it, probably.
Yeah, just for the trivia, Kienbach's disease is basically sclerosis and collapse, something called the lunate bone, which is one of your one of the carpal bones in your wrist. So just little trivia stuff there. But so Phil, you run a Facebook group, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's called 100% Carnivore and Beyond. And the Beyond is you like to call it the woo-woo stuff, the maybe the deuterium and some of the other stuff. And I know you might have had discussions. You talked about some of the yoga related stuff, but I can't do the Ayurvedic type belief. And you said, well, truly, if you go back far enough, meat was part of that. But can you discuss the Beyond stuff? I mean, I think that is kind of the interesting stuff, because a lot of us, obviously everybody in this sort of video conference is generally on board with carnivore, and many, if not most of them, have seen tremendous improvements in all kind of health disorders, whether it's diabetes or weight loss or autoimmune disease or eating disorders or mental health disease, so on and so forth, which is just spectacular. And I think we're doing such a good service for, and I'm sure you guys do. I mean, you just help so many people, and it's so rewarding. But share with us some of the woo stuff that you guys are up to, and I wanted maybe if people have questions about that, because that's interesting stuff to me as well.
Sure. Well, I come from a sort of meditating and yogi type background, and I put all of my eggs in one basket thinking that was going to heal me, and it didn't. But just like in diet science, there's a load of complete nonsense covering up a few little gems, and it's difficult sometimes, and it takes years to pick those diamonds out of the dog shit. And it's the same with the woo-woo stuff. Woo-woo stuff. Well, I think, there are a lot of things that I implemented back then when I was vegetarian and yogi minded, and when I was vegan, and 99% of them didn't work, but a load of them did. And those are a kind of, they fall more into the sort of emotional balancing side of things. Particularly if you go on a very strict PKD type of diet, you can work absolute wonders with these complex health issues. But often underlying, there are certain issues that people have with, PTSD, or some kind of strange belief that they've got, or fear, or lack of self-confidence, things like that. That's on the emotional side, and I guess really the spiritual side, if you like. But then there's also, you have, it's just really simple. It's just all the other ancestral disconnects. I mean, I've heard you talk about most of them. Artificial light at night, ruining that whole melatonin cortisol cycle. Getting enough sunlight, which is the vitamin D, but who knows what else it gives us. It could give us all kinds of other things that we don't even know. Just getting back to fooling the body into thinking it's back in those ancestral times when we didn't have these chronic diseases, and when we died mostly of broken bones and infections and that kind of thing, and we weren't all diabetic. So it just covers all those other areas, really. How were we? What are all these things that stress the mitochondria, that lead to these malfunctions, these confusions? They can be on all levels. They can be on the level of light, and there's the deuterium angle. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Laszlo Boros, another drummer, he's a great researcher into all of this, and he's had spectacular results with deuterium depletion. Zofia thinks it's nonsense. There's differing opinions out there, but when you look at it through the lens of this deuterium depletion thing, it just seems to explain all the rest of the ancestral things anyway. It ties in with them. The fact that fruit grows when the sun comes out, and fruit's high in deuterium, so the sun helps to deplete it. It's really all a matter of, like Jack says, I guess, just relating things back to nature. And science doesn't really mean much unless people have personal experience, and it kind of backs up your personal experience, or it ties in with nature. What's nature doing? Maybe we should use science to explain that, rather than figure out which chemical might alleviate the symptoms for a little bit before they blow up your liver. So this is the Beyond stuff, really. I mean, also the Beyond stuff, of course, ends up as posting loads of stuff about COVID and all sorts of vegan bashing as well. But that's unavoidable these days. But you know, I don't think it's actually really very far out. The stuff that we deal with, just ancestral disconnects, really, just tying it all in.
Yeah, we have a fellow by the name of Dr. Q Collins. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He talks a bit about bacterium, and so he's going to be joining us. I don't know. I know we're in communication with him coming on. He wants to come on, and so that'll be an interesting talk to get his perspective on deuterium, because I think I can't remember who I chatted with. A friend of yours, you mentioned
Graham Norbury.
Yeah, Graham Norbury. Yeah. And we had a chat a while ago, but be interesting to get some of that. So that's an interesting topic. So this is something that, and I just got done doing another podcast before I got on here, and somebody was talking about the fact that, particularly, I guess my style, which tends to be in your face, a little bit of aggressive. Some people call me too brash, and I tell them, if you don't like it, go somewhere else, just getting the message out. But you've got a little bit of a brash freak as well. I mean, you're irreverent. I've seen some of your stuff. Some of it's quite humorous. You've been out there, and obviously when you step up and do that, you get attacked a lot. But I do think more of us need to do that. I mean, this is something, I think the stakes are too high, and I say that with all seriousness. It's a lot of people say, well, let's just get along and let people do that, and I'm all for you eat what you want to eat, I'll eat what I want to eat. But that's not what is happening. We have a large percentage of people, particularly these, vitriolic, aggressive, vegan activists that want you and I to just give up the food that makes us healthy and shut it down, all in the name of, saving the snails and the mollusks and whatever thing they deem are sentient animals and creatures. And certainly, I think everyone in here would say that, we don't really like the fact that chickens are stuck in cages and big battery chicken farms. There's a better way to do that. Doesn't mean that all human beings giving up the food that we sort of evolved on is the answer either. And so there's a better way to do it. So are you still out there, are you still out there and still getting a lot of aggression? I mean, I don't know about, most of your time is spent within your Facebook group. I don't imagine you get a lot of sort of activists and trolls in there, but I mean, are you still doing the Facebook stuff, or what's going on with that? Not sure what happened there. Did you get muted, Phil? I think you might be muted. Let me see. Not sure why you're muted. Hang on. Phil, are you still there?
Yes, mate, I'm here. Sorry about that. I muted because the kids were making a big racket downstairs. My partner is a nurse. She's working today. She works in COVID wards and COVID care homes, and she is seeing nothing of the sort that we're told is going on. But anyway, so I've got the kids and they're making a racket. Yes, am I still out there getting aggression? Well, actually, I think I've blocked the worst offenders, so I don't get the tirade of death threats that I used to. But I think you're absolutely right. I think we should mess about with it. I think we should have fun with it. I mean, I watch your videos and I'm in hysterics half the time. I think they're hilarious. I love the way you just have this don't give a shit attitude. And I think that's important, because the thing is, what people don't see behind it is how much you care, because I know how much I care as well. Even when I'm slating veganism and whatever, I'm not slating vegans. I mean, our groups are populated, are they not, by a high percentage of people who used to be vegan, and we don't take the piss out of them, and we don't throw them out, and we don't, we accept them and we welcome them, and we love to see them heal. And how many have we seen heal? I mean, God, so many. So that, I have no beef with vegans, pardon the pun, and I don't have any hostility with anybody who wants to eat what they eat. I mean, just like you, I think what I want to see is that meat stops being vilified, and that vegetables stop being raised to these saintly things that we eat. And if we can just kind of balance that viewpoint out, and when people have some issue with kidney stones or something, maybe it is, hey, maybe you're taking in too many oxalates, If somebody has some kind of issue with autoimmunity, maybe the gut's being wrecked by too many pizzas, you're gonna have to give them up for a while, We don't smack them in the face and excommunicate them for eating pizza. It's just that if only they could know about this, if only the actual info was out there, but it's not. So not only are we trying to help people, but we're being attacked by the mainstream and by vegans and all sorts, when it's so weird, isn't it? Because for every death threat you get so many success stories and messages of thanks and whatever. And it's kind of surreal if they could see it from our side. And then when people post that, they even accuse you of taking on fake accounts to make those comments. You're like, why the fuck? Why would I possibly waste my time doing that? It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre. The cognitive dissonance is massive out there.
Yeah, I would have had to have made 10,000 fake accounts by now to put up all the success stories I put up. I mean, one of the, Joel Kahn is kind of my off and on nemesis. It's kind of
I noticed.
He often calls me an asshole, and I tell him to F off, and but he's coming on, and we're going to have a little discussion. But I pose this question because I said veganism is a cancer, and we need to go against that. And what I'm referring to, and again, like I said, I don't necessarily have any animosity towards any particular vegan, but veganism as it's practiced, and I said, Joel, are you defending a plant-based diet? Or are you defending a meat is murder cult? And I think that's the nuance that people need to understand. When you have somebody out there calling me a murderer and a rapist, and I hope your soul rots in hell, roasts in hell. That was the actual quote. That is very different from saying you eat what you eat and I like what I eat. I mean, those are two different things. And what I'm saying is I am opposed to that attitude, and then also the propaganda and the misinformation, disinformation, the willful bending of the truth, the half-truths that is being put forth. And I think that's what we have to stand up against. And then, of course, as there is a huge $150 billion market into fake meat and all these other, feel-good plant-based products, which are extremely, extremely profitable, but also just highly, highly detrimental to human health. It's just more processed garbage. And this is why this message is becoming so strongly pushed by the media and even some of the government stuff and some of the propaganda that our children are receiving. And our children's education paid for by big food, basically. And I mean, we can see it go down the rabbit hole, and I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but clearly anybody with half a bit of objectivity can see this from a mile away. And I think we as people can either blindly accept it, which is what most people do. Most people are, as long as it tastes good and their tummy's full and, they've got a roof over there, they could give a flying F. And, I look at I've got small children. I've got 4 of them. We're in the process of adopting a 5th. And I'm like, I don't want these kids to grow up in a world where they're depressed, where they have autoimmune disease, when they're nutritionally malnourished, and they never get to experience what living as a human being is supposed to be like. And arguably we don't either, because we live in homes and, we spend most of our time in front of a computer screen, sitting down in a lightless, soulless box, basically. But at least you can, the nutrition side you can fight for.
Well, this is what worries me is the thought of my kids growing up having to eat that crap. At the moment, my kids I have a 30-year-old son, and we brought him up vegetarian, and he had a lot of health issues, and he's still unwinding them now. And I have an 11-year-old and a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old has been pretty much carnivore since he was weaned. And my daughter is now carnivore too. And, a bit of fruit, a little bit of chocolate now and again. And that's pretty much what they eat, unless she goes out. She's just been for a sleepover and eaten some crap and got a couple of zits. It's immediate. But, they are, if they've got the same HLA-B27 problem that I have, and they've got possible autoimmunity in their future, if they eat the wrong thing, I don't want them to eat that. I was encouraged recently. I saw a tweet by Impossible Foods about, this fake meat is so wonderful, and in 5 years you're going to be eating, or 15 was it, you're going to be eating your last bite of meat and you won't even know it. And I thought, oh my God. And I looked underneath and I was so encouraged. There was just hundreds of tweets saying, that's crap, I'm not eating that shit, and just sort of throwing up emojis and things like that, tons of them. And I put in, you know, of course we're going to notice, you know, those of us who have fixed ourselves on autoimmunity on a meat-based diet are going to go straight back into agony after a little while on that. I mean, I remember when I used to eat that stuff back in the Linda McCartney days and her processed food, and how well did that work out for poor Linda. And, you know, I lived in a house of vegetarian meditators, and we thought it was perfectly normal to just fart all the time. I mean, seriously, we had what we used to call a methane level. So if you wanted to actually breathe oxygen, you used to have to crawl, because above that was just farts constantly. And, you know, it was just like, if you had your Hawaiian crunch for breakfast and your rice and dal for lunch, and you had your Linda McCartney burgers in the evening, it was just a permanent gas leak. And why on earth we didn't figure out. And did you hear Dr. Clapper talking recently about why it is that vegans fart a lot, you know, and it's nothing to do with the cellulose, you know, decomposing in them. It's nothing to do with that. It's that they swallow more air when they eat. And I'm like, I don't swallow any air with my steak. I mean, I hardly fart anymore. And then Tristan was funny, you know, Tristan Haggard, and he was taking a mickey out of this one. He said, so now you heard it here. He said, boys and girls, deflate your lettuce before you eat it. It's just hilarious, the stuff they come out with. I can't believe that these people are intelligent doctors. They're the ones I have a problem with. My real, I mean, not a nemesis because I've never spoken to him, but the one who really winds me up is Dr. Greger. I can't believe that anybody looks at this guy or listens to this guy. And he's slurring his words so bad. Now, Tristan was on one of his live streams. He looped something that Greger said over and over, and there was no way of deciphering what he'd said. And it's just bizarre. I mean, the poor guy, I wish him well. I hope he wakes up. I hope he eats the steak. I hope he puts a bit of muscle back on. But right now, come on, he's a total joke. How does anyone look at it? Don't you wonder the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, and I had this discussion earlier this morning, and there's a point where, you know, the argument a lot of people say, well, you don't have to be a tremendous athlete to be a coach, and there's some validity to that, but also there's a point where you have to be able to walk the walk. But, you know, back to your little bit of argument that you're talking about, the swallowing air, there is actually data. They've actually done studies on diets looking at flatulence production and showing that no fiber diets versus full fiber diets has a tremendous difference in the amount of flatus that's been quantified. So they've actually done those studies. They're from like the 1950s and 60s, where they measured gas output from the lower end and what the dietary components. And clearly, fiber has a huge impact on how much farting you do. So Clapper's completely wrong. McDougall opined about this a while ago. You see one of his blogs talking about, people farting all the time in the vegan diet. And, you know, his argument, well, humans lived outside all the time, so it wasn't really an issue, and that's why we're supposed to be like a friggin' rhinoceros, crapping and farting all day long. And, you know, I've made this argument, you've probably heard it, or many have. I said, look, if your digestion is uncomfortable, if you're bloated, if you're gassy, if you have any kind of pain or discomfort, that to me means that it's not working like it's supposed to. Either the digestive system itself is sick, or the food you're eating is the wrong food. And I mean, why would we accept painful breathing, painful joints, chest pain, anything that's uncomfortable or painful does not make sense at all. And clearly, when you eat a high fiber diet, for many, if not most people, they will notice discomfort in their digestion. I mean, and they'll just pass it off as normal. What was the other point?
Back in the ancestral times, it was, you know, it wasn't so much fun farting, because it was pretty dangerous lighting them off a campfire, wasn't it? I mean, that could get in terrible trouble. This is what cigarette lighters were made for, you know, for vegetarians to entertain themselves with their own bottoms. And that, you know, was quite amusing, I suppose, while it lasted. But I'm kind of glad to see the back of it. I really am.
Yeah, so a little bit of danger with that. Yeah, that's interesting. So. Phil, I have to say I'm truly disappointed we didn't get to hook up this year in Spain. Is that still happening next year, as far as you know? I mean,
we'll chat about that. We'll chat about that. We booked it again for the 3rd of May next year, providing we're not all banned from flying. Yeah, it would have been a lot of fun. It's an amazing event. It's lovely, and it's great to have the the Human Unleashed boys there, and we always love getting together, you know. I mean, this is something that's fascinated me, because somebody like Dr. Jeremy Ayres, who is one of the guys with Graham Norbury, who you've spoken to, and Ben Hunt, my great friends on this Human Unleashed thing, where we've teamed up. And what I love about some of these practitioners, not just regular doctors, but people like Jeremy Ayres, who have been really helping people and fixing very complex situations for many years. And he found me through my Carnivore group, and we got on so well. He says that even that, you know, when he was using juicing protocols and all kinds of things like that, it's not just the people who are very sick or whatever who come to this, but it's when doctors who have been very successful, not even just regular doctors, maybe some oncologist or something who finds out that he's not curing anyone with chemotherapy. But Jeremy, who had fantastic results, then said, do you know what? The final piece of the puzzle, or a very big piece of the puzzle, there's never a final piece of the puzzle, was putting Carnivore in. You know, and he said it made all the other techniques so much more effective, and to be putting his patients on that, his clients rather, as he calls them, on that has made a huge difference to all the other techniques that were already very, very successful. And so I love these people moving over to it. These people who are influencers as well, but not necessarily in the mainstream. They seem to be a lot more open-minded, apart from, you know, certain naturopaths are stuck in veganism and whatever. But it seems to be a lot of the practitioners are coming over to it as well, and noticing a huge difference in the results for their clients. Have you seen this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I see more and more physicians. You know, in this MeatRx community, we have over 140 physicians on the platform. I mean, we have a special medical platform, and so we are seeing more and more physicians that are finding that this is effective for their patients. And, you know, right now it's still, you know, you have to be a little careful practicing. Oh my God, you're not telling people to eat, you know, six pounds of fruits and vegetables a day. How dare you? You know, and so that is the biggest hurdle right now. I mean, you know, there's plenty of people that say, yeah, maybe meat's not killing us, but my God, you better eat, you better scarf down your vegetables. If you're not doing that, you know, how dare you tell your patients that type of thing. That's probably the biggest hurdle there. But I mean, clearly, I mean, you see it on social media all the time. More and more physicians, you know, Paul Mason's out there tweeting, hey, I just saw a patient with hemochromatosis, ferritin 1,000. I put him on a high protein, low lectin diet, AKA basically a carnivore diet, and now their ferritin's 75. You know, I mean, so we see this repeatedly. There are more and more physicians that are getting more and more vocal. I like to think that some of my, you know, my sort of unapologetic promotion has encouraged and given some people some cover. You know, I take most of the arrows, and they kind of sit there in the back, behind, and, you know, just kind of do their thing in a more professional manner. And I think that's great too. I think we need all types in this. And, you know, like I said, I like the people that are bold and are willing to say, you know, F you and F the world, and we're going to go with the results is. And, you know, one of the things we just put up on there with the carnivore diet, you know, it's like MeatRx is like real people, real results. And I think, to me, that resonates very strong, because as a physician, I learn more from my patients than I learn from any textbook, from all the, and this is what you're supposed to do as a physician. You're not supposed to lecture your patients on, you know, what they're supposed to do, and then when they do it, it fails, and you say, well, you're just a crappy patient. We had this saying called piss poor protoplasm. So we would have somebody who would come in and they had all these medical issues, and, you know, they get a complication. And what was the reason for that complication? Well, they're just shitty people. I mean, they got shitty tissue. They don't eat right. They don't exercise. They don't care. And so it's piss poor protoplasm. And the right answer should have been, why didn't you help that person fix that? And why is the answer? Because we don't know what to do. We are clueless. We don't know how to fix people. We know how to give them pills. We know how to do surgeries. You know, we got very elegant surgeries and elegant, you know, things to put. I mean, they're just Band-Aids, as you know, you're well aware. I mean, it's just like putting in my view, a knee replacement is a $3,000 Band-Aid. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, or, you know, the insurance company pays $30,000, but it's a big Band-Aid for, you know, and again, sometimes it's a Band-Aid that's necessary, but why didn't we, you know, like Phil, I mean, if you would have not found Carnivore, you probably would have had joint replacements. I mean, and you know, hopefully you won't need them, but I mean, that's where you were clearly heading. And now you've hopefully avoided that. So, I mean, I think that's liberty, but absolutely.
It's funny because I had some x-rays a little while ago after we talked, as I was chatting to you about my knee a couple of years ago, I think, but I had x-rays on it, and there's not even any cartilage worn away, even though there's been inflammation in there for ages, or there was, and the synovium is kind of thickened up. There's no actual joint damage, which is fascinating. They were amazed. They said, what, you've had psoriatic arthritis for this long, and there's the cartilage hasn't been eaten away. And all I can put it down to really is just not eating the things that deplete the cartilage and rob the cartilage of sulfur, or whatever the process is, as Jack sort of cottoned onto at one point. But nothing going on there, and that blew me away, really. I thought that was great. It's just you know, just a synovium thickening that's been left with, and I'm sure there's a way I can figure that out. That's my present challenge, is to get my knee back to a state where I can sit in lotus position and squat arse to the floor again, you know.
Yeah, an interesting study came out last year looking at synoviocytes, which are the cells that produce the synovial fluid, and it showed that high levels of insulin stimulate the synovial cells to produce inflammatory cytokines, which lead to destruction of the joint. So as we see, just another one of the many, many benefits of keeping our insulin levels relatively low is arthritic disease. And I've maintained it. I've been saying this for, gosh, 3 or 4 years now. Arthritis in most cases is just the metabolic, it's the orthopedic manifestation of metabolic disease. And I think that's, you know, because my classical training was, you know, people get overweight and it's mechanical loading and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Our knee experiences 4 times our body weight through the joint, through its, you know, through the, joint loading dynamics and stuff. And really what's going on is we know now that, yes, being obese is a problem, but it's probably the inflammatory cytokines that the adipocytes sort of liberate, and that's probably one of the issues. And some of the other things we talked about. There's probably a lot of things, but it's probably much more biologic, even in osteoarthritis. You know, to include, I mean, obviously inflammatory arthropathies like psoriatic arthritis, you know, rheumatoid arthritis, and some of the others. So it's clearly the case.
Well, I think, you know, I think what I always come back to is to try and get people to think about subtraction, you know, and I think this is where you simplified a message as well. It's beautiful. I mean, if I want to go listen to really crazy science, which you probably understand, I don't, but I go listen to Paul Saladino's podcast, and it kind of goes in one ear and out the other, but it's fascinating stuff. But to me, it's very simple. You know, I go on there to learn from a science perspective why these simple things work. But I have a course out there called Autoimmunity, the subtraction method. And it's just about how to subtract all these things that confuse the mitochondria and confuse the metabolism. And once you subtract those and get rid of those, then the body tends to fix itself. Like I always say, people sort of say things like, because I've got that video up on YouTube about with some pictorial evidence of when my mother's breast cancer reversed. And then you get comments like, oh, so you think you can cure cancer, do you? Well, you're not even a doctor, you know, it's what nonsense. And say, no, I don't think I can cure cancer, not at all. But if you're lucky enough to figure out all the influences in a person that is confusing the mitochondria, then the one thing kicks in that can cure cancer, and that is the human body, right? I mean, it has its own systems to mop up stray cancer cells, and I believe that it does that all the time. If you can get it to a state of you know, get it out of its state of confusion so it can do that, then these miracles happen with all of these ailments. And the problem is, it's so easy to be called a dangerous quack and whatever when you say stuff like this, because it just sounds so simple. But what I was saying in a Facebook post this morning, I had a big rant, you know, and it was, once you can take these things out and be that sort of simple, distill it down to such a simple message, it's so easy for people to say that's nonsense and dismiss it, because they don't realize you didn't find that in 2 minutes Googling. Generally, those of us who have found it have studied and studied diet. We've tried every diet under the sun, from veganism through macrobiotic, paleo, keto, all of these things. and then finally found this, and it's fixed us. And then we go looking for the science about how it's worked. But when we explain it to people, you can actually explain it in 5 minutes. So they think you're a total nutter that sort of Googled this and found some crazy website. But it's not. The simplicity of the message is almost its downfall in the present climate.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you know, it's nice to talk about some of the mechanistic stuff, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, even to the level we understand it now, we are probably orders of magnitude away from understanding the full complexity of this. So anytime somebody says, well, this is a mechanism that we study, therefore take this supplement, or, you know, this or that, I look at that and I say, we don't really know. I mean, that's, you know, we've got this, well, everybody's going to be taking all these NAD, you know, this is one of the, you know, I mean, there's so many, we've seen this over the years, this supplement, that supplement, you add more in the system thinking you're going to get the result, and guess what the results are? Generally not very good. And I mean, because people ask me about supplementation all the time, what supplement should I take? And I said, well, take ones that might work, but be objective about it. You know, and I think a lot of people will agree with this, when you switch from whatever diet you were on, standard American diet, paleo diet, even keto diet, and you went carnivore, many of us noted a dramatic improvement. I mean, we're not talking like, you know, I felt maybe 3% better. It's like, I feel like a new person. That to me is worth pursuing. When I used to take supplements, and I would take whatever, you know, I didn't take raspberry ketones or whatever Dr. Oz was showing, but I can't remember what I took, but let's say I took something, I never noticed a difference. I honestly never noticed a difference. And I'm like, why the hell am I spending my money on this stuff? And, you know, and I dutifully did that. And that's why the supplement industry is a whatever billion-dollar industry it is, because all these people take their pills and they never get results, and they make expensive urine. And, you know, and again, it's not to say that like I said, there's probably one supplement I took in my life that had an improvement, at least in athletic performance, that was creatine. And obviously, where's creatine comes from meat. You know, and a lot of these supplements that have actually got some efficacy behind them are things you find in meat anyway. L-carnitine, creatine, carnosine, you know, taurine. Just eat the damn steak, you know, or just eat whatever. Eat the fat, eat the suet, eat the liver, whatever. So I'm with you on the subtraction. I think, you know, when you have a problem, decreasing the number of confounders, because probably it's, you know, why am I taking you know, if you go to the doctor and you know, and the answer is, I'm going to give you an anti-inflammatory. And I mean, I cannot tell you how many Motrin prescriptions and Vioxx when that was still on the market, and Mobic, and, you know, and Indocin. I mean, I prescribed those like candy for years, because that was what I knew as an orthopedic surgeon. And the question was, you know, it should have been, my knee is inflamed, here's your anti-inflammatory. The question I should have asked, and as a patient should ask, was, why am I inflamed in the first place? And my answer would be, well, because you twisted your knee. That might make sense. Or it might be, I don't know, you're old. I don't know, genetics. I don't know, you're just unlucky. That's not a good answer. That's not an acceptable answer, and no one should accept that. It should be, you know, why am I inflamed in the first place? And if that's the answer you get, your doctor's clueless. And I mean, it's you know, there's something going on there.
Yeah, I've noticed this so much. I mean, a common thing is being able to empty out the supplement cupboard, isn't there? That even existed there when I was keto and with a few veg. I was still sort of, oh, my digestion's not right. This is not right. That's not right. And so you're taking a load of kombucha and sauerkraut and stuff like that. And that can just all go in the bin now. It's marvelous. I mean, I think that there are some, I've got to give a shout out to my friend Elliot Overton here. He, you know, I think you might have talked to him at some point. He might have been on the HBO podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I do send people to him when I think that there are some things that happen when there are certain nutritional deficiencies that are so ingrained. When you come into a carnivore diet, sometimes it doesn't fix certain things. And maybe in some people, if you really know what you're doing, certain things, you know, like he's got this big crusade on thiamine at the moment. Now, I also take the point of Zofia, you know, who always says, drop the supplements out because they're always packaged with crap and they keep the gut leaky. And I think in the early stages, the big aim really should be to fix the gut and get everything tight down there. Because most people who take supplements, the people who need them and who are taking them probably don't absorb any of them anyway. Like you say, it's just expensive urine, so it's a waste of time. They're low quality supplements. They're packed with all kinds of crap and rice starch and potato starch, God knows what, I don't know. But this is not going to do the gut very much good at all, particularly since people use a blunderbuss approach and take a whole handful of stuff they don't even know they're deficient in. But yeah, if you go back to complete basics, then maybe if you still have some issues, there are some tweaks. It might be get the light right, wear blue blockers more, get out in the sun more, sort some emotional stuff out, go to Elliot, get some testing. And if you're deficient in thiamine, maybe put a bit of, you know, thiamine without any packaging in for a while, whatever. But that's not my forte. But I haven't needed any, except I did actually. I was drinking much too much red wine recently, and I thought, I'm getting a bit of brain fog. And it was weird actually, because it was at the same time that I listened to one of your podcasts, or one of your videos, and you were mentioning that, what's it called? It's some Korsakoff syndrome or something. And I thought, yeah, oh my God. Yeah, and you were saying, they were saying that meat's like, you know, smoking cigarettes or something like that. How harmful is it? Or like drinking, wasn't it? And you were saying, no, but drinking does this and that. And I thought, hang on, I'm getting a bit brain fog. So I got in touch with Elliot. I got some thiamine on his recommendation. It completely cleared up. It's funny, you know, because when I was, this is my guilty secret, is too much red wine. When I was vegetarian, I used to get blood tests, and the doc used to say to me, are you an alcoholic? I hadn't drunk for 30 years. I was teetotal. I hadn't. And since then, the fatty liver's gone, cysts on the liver have gone, and I drink wine. And not if I want my abs to come out, but if I don't mind them a bit covered, I leave it, you know, and drink some wine. That's the only thing I really notice. But I made a video actually ages ago about Sean Baker's blood work. Will you stop asking me about it, you know? And then there's some vegans came up and said, no, Sean's going to die of diabetes and heart disease, the usual shite. And they said, well, you get your bloods done. And so I thought, okay, I'll go get my bloods done. And I had them done. And I went in for the results, and LDL was up a bit. Everything else was great. And I said to the nurse, you know, I'm on a really high fat carnivore diet. That's okay. You know, and she said, oh yeah, we know that. That's a con to sell statins. And I thought, wow, I don't have an argument here. Isn't that cool? And she'd woken up about it. And then I said, yeah, but what about the liver results? And she looked at them and she went, absolutely perfect. And I thought, wow, that's weird, since I never used to drink. And I used to be asked if I was an alcoholic. So, you know, all that pita bread and rice and pasta and crunching up cornflakes was blocking up my liver way more than a bit of red wine does. And it was funny. Did you hear about this rat study where they did some study and gave 3 groups of rats or something, different types of oils? And then they gave them alcohol to see how quickly they could blow up their livers, and their livers blew up and whatever. But the group that was running on tallow, they couldn't give them enough alcohol to blow up their livers, something like that. And I thought, oh yeah, I wonder if that's protecting me. But anyway, but yes, I'm a bit stupid, and I tend to sort of take experiments too far. And I thought, well, you know, I'm like a teenager now. I've just discovered that I can actually drink wine again. And then, yeah, a bit of brain fog in the mornings. And I thought, yeah, I better bung some thiamine in. And it did. It resolved it immediately. So, you know, if you're a bit silly and doing stuff like that, it's like I tend to do, then you can fix things. And if you know what you're doing, and that's probably where supplements and things come in. But yeah, absolutely. You just don't have to take them, as far as I can see. I mean, a supplement pill to me is some oysters or some liver. That's how I cover it.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, and you know, you certainly can find within animal products every darn vitamin, mineral you could possibly want. With regard to thiamine, and then also folate. I mean, you know, if you go to the ER and you have someone who has alcohol issues, particularly alcoholics, the first thing you do is you hang a bag. We call it a banana bag, where you get thiamine and folate infused into these people because they tend to be low. And just with regard to, there are a number of animal studies that show that saturated fat does protect the liver from alcoholic damage. So that, you know, if you're going to have a glass of wine, pair it with a steak. I mean, that does seem to be the case. Now, interestingly, there's literature that goes back like 100 years looking at thiamine deficiencies, which cause a thiamine deficiency causes a disease called beriberi, and there's 2 forms, a neurologic type and a cardiovascular type, wet and dry beriberi. And so, interestingly, when serum thiamine levels are really low and people get beriberi, we see that they've done animal studies where they look at animals on a low carb diet versus animals on a high carb diet. And those animals on a high carb diet, once their serum thiamine levels got to a certain level, they would start exhibiting signs of beriberi. But if they were on a low carb diet, those same low thiamine levels did not result in the disease. So again, even our serum levels, you know, because people talk about deficiency. So even if your serum level is lower than you'd expect on a high carb diet and you're on a low carb diet, you don't get the symptoms. So this is why I have problems with people saying, well, vitamin D and this and that, and I measured in my serum. Even the serum levels can be different and you don't express the clinical manifestations of the disease. So we still don't fully understand the implications of all these stuff. So at the end of the day, like you said, I look at the body as kind of a black box, input and output. And all we care about are those two variables, because I know if you tell me to eat this way and my diabetes goes away, that's all that matters. Now you'll have people like Rhonda Patrick saying, you got to know the mechanism so we can do what? Make a drug? You know, I mean, all you need to eat is eat the right damn food, do the right lifestyle modification. And if you get the results you want, who the F cares? That's been my message all along. And I know that's,
you said something great a while ago where you said, well, what is a healthy microbiome? It's one that a person who feels well has. We don't understand about it. The whole thing got crazily out of hand with the Hadza people, you know, who have this amazingly diverse microbiome, but they don't look like the healthiest people in that country to me, the original country where my missus comes from. The Maasai look a lot more healthy to me, and there they are with their very, very high meat and blood diet, and they're 7 foot tall and killing lions with their bare hands and whatever, and they look better to me. And I understand that they have a simplified gut flora, but also I've heard that you know, there have been some studies which show that carnivore diets bring up the diversity of the microbiome. So I think it's funny. People pretend to know about the microbiome. I don't believe anybody does. I listen to all sorts of people talking about it, but they always disagree. Nobody seems to really understand what's going on. And that's my point as well about virology. You know, there's a young doctor who I know who is on the front line and came onto our Human Unleashed, one of our chats. We got a lot of them on our website about COVID. We've been banging on for hours since the middle of March. And he came on to blow up some of the crazy things that he was seeing on the ward. And he's been wanting to speak out for ages because he's a carnivore. And he's been seeing, you know, he's on the wards and there's diabetes patients being served all jellies and ice creams and whatever. And it's really tragic to him. But this COVID thing brought him out of his shell. And he was saying that if we can't understand even what our ancestral diet was, how is it that we can understand something that's trillions of times more complicated, which is virology? So you're listening to all these people, and people are being censored, you know, on London Real at the moment and whatever, saying completely different things, but kind of agreeing with each other, but outside the mainstream, so they don't like people to hear it. There is so much confusion. I listen to it. I love it. I love listening to the scientific stuff. But like you say, it's all about what you put into somebody and the results they get. And that's what I love to see. And it amazes me constantly just how simple it is.
Yeah. You know, I've said, you know, like I said, microbiome, we are probably never going to figure out what it is. And, you know, I can't, you know, like I said, that's sort of putting the cart before the horse. You know, I mean, I think if I'm healthy and I'm absence of disease, and by definition, my microbiome is happy and healthy, and you know, anybody that sort of tries to say, well, you really need this ratio of firmicutes and this ratio of bacteroides and so on and so forth. It's really, you know, in my view, just completely, you know, ridiculous. You know, as far as the COVID stuff, I've talked about that stuff. It's frustrating because, you know, it's so divisive and polarizing. When I talk about it on social media, no matter what side of the issue I take, I lose a bunch of people and followers, and you know, it's not even, I find it's not even worth it at this point, you know. And you know, I think like I said, we're going to get locked down, we're not going to get locked down. It's almost, you know, do we actually have a choice in this matter? And that's the frustrating part. I think
you know, the division thing is the tragedy, right? I mean, if somebody doesn't believe what I believe, cool. You know, I love them despite that. It's ridiculous.
Well, but then you're killing their loved one if you don't believe that, you know. And so I mean, you know, I mean, this is a thing. So right now, and again, I don't mean this to be controversial. Right now, there's the people that think, you know, wearing a mask is silly. There's other people say you've got to wear a mask because it's going to save the world. And they're saying that if you don't wear a mask, you are putting me and my family at risk. Well, what happens when they roll out the vaccine and you say, I don't want the vaccine? Is the same argument going to be made? If you're not vaccinated, you are therefore putting my family at risk. And then, you know, because the line is right now, well, wearing a mask is it's a minor inconvenience. And they're going to say, well, the vaccine is just a minor inconvenience. It's a little prick in the skin. Suck it up. Don't be a baby. And I'm not anti-vaccine. I want to say that for the first thing. I think some vaccines can be helpful. I know that's a controversial statement among some people. I think it's nuanced. I think there's some vaccines that are a total waste of time. There are some people that certainly do less well with a vaccine than others. Perhaps the kid schedule is too aggressive. I don't know if you guys know who Bob Sears is and the Sears Clinic, who has been a guy who's been censored by the California State Board for recommending a delayed vaccine schedule or a less, you know, concentrated vaccine schedule. That's my guy. That's my kid's pediatrician. I mean, so, I mean, I just happen to live right where he is. And in fact, I have to go to his office today to get a TB test as we're adopting a child. I have to have a physical exam. One of them is a TB test. So I'm just going to go there to do it. But so, you know, where do we draw the line? At what point are we going to say we're going to mandate your requirements? Now, people say, well, if I travel to West Africa, I've got to have a yellow fever vaccination. You know, I mean, that's already in place. We know that if kids go to school, they've got to have these mandatory vaccines. And so that groundwork has already been made. And so do we get to the point where we say all adults, in order to go into a shopping mall or a grocery store, need to have the coronavirus COVID-19 vaccine? I mean, I don't know. Are we going to get there? That's an interesting thought.
I agree with you totally about nuance. This is important. I mean, I'm, I guess, an anti-vaxxer. I mean, I'm not an anti-vaxxer in that I'm interested in the guys who are called anti-vaxxers, who are being censored, who are not anti-vaxxers at all. You know, like Judy Mikovits and whatever, and who else? I don't know, a few of them, but they're just saying we want safe ones. And they're not actually anti-vaxxers at all. And if they can produce safe ones and they're useful for people, then why not? But I don't trust them, you know. But I do trust my knowledge of strengthening the immune system, and I trust that for my kids. And fortunately, in this country, we don't have mandatory vaccinations. And the headmaster at my school is very cool, and he calls me up when they're going to come in and give these nasal flu things, and says, time to take your kids home, because he knows that I don't want them around. I don't even want them around when they're shedding. But my kids don't get sick. You know, they'll get a sniffle one evening and I think, oh, maybe they'll be off school in the morning, and they bounce out of bed fine, and their friends are off school for a week and they've all been vaccinated, but they're also eating Cocoa Pops and pizza and stuff like that. So it's hard to tell what's going on, but I think I will put my trust in that at the moment, while there is this great controversy about vaccinations. I'm not one of the, I think it's very likely that some of them have done a lot of damage, and that ridiculous schedule of giving millions of vaccinations to kids when they're that young is pretty crazy. But I don't know. You know, I don't really take a side on anything. I've been wrong about things so many times in my life. I just keep an open mind about everything. But right now, with what I feel about vaccinations, I'm not going to trust them anywhere near my kids. That's for sure.
Well, and I certainly support anyone's right to make that decision. I think that's the bottom line. I mean, we should support, you know, when it comes to personal health decisions or health decisions for the family, we should support that. And that's what's, unfortunately, there's people that don't believe in that. They think they can dictate what's right for all people based on really poor science, because it's not clear. Anyway, well, Phil, unfortunately, I have to go run do yet another podcast. So I appreciate it, Phil. I look forward to seeing you next year, hopefully. I know, I have had so many events canceled this year, and even the ones that they were going to reschedule in November, it's unclear that those are going to happen. And so, gosh, I know they're talking about closing the schools until January here in California. And who do you got with you there, Phil?
This is Amelia. This is my daughter.
Hello.
Amelia. Hi there. Welcome. How are you? Good to see you.
There's a lot of people.
There are
a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people that all like to hear what your dad has to say, and
There's Brett.
Yeah. So anyway, Phil, let folks know how to find you and some of the social media stuff real quick, if you don't mind.
Cool. Yes, thank you, Sean. Well, you can find me at pureactivity.net, pureactivity one word.net, or at my Facebook group, which is 100% Carnivore and Beyond. I have a YouTube channel under my own name, but I think my favorite thing that I'm doing at the moment is the Human Unleashed project. Drop in and have a look at that and see some of the, there's 30 days free, and come and check it out. I think it's a good complement to MeatRx, and I'm always sending people off to MeatRx anyway. So we're all on the same side here, and I think it's great that people are setting up stuff like this. Sean's website here is a beast, and it's doing some great work. So thehumanunleashed.com, and those are the places to find me.
Thanks again, Phil. Wonderful work. Keep up the good work. You guys, please check it out. And you said, what was the first one was Pure, right? P-U-R-E?
P-U-R-E activity, one word, yes. Pureactivity.net.
Okay.
That's my website.
Wonderful. All right, guys. Well, I'll see many of you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll be back with Matt Spack. For you guys to know, Matt's an NFL athlete, carnivore. So more interesting stuff to come. All right, Phil. You guys have a great day.
Thanks for having me on. See you guys.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.